He killed 1,000 men with the jawbone of a donkey. He tore a lion apart with his bare hands, the way a farmer rips open a fig. He once walked into a fortified city built to trap him, ripped its gates out of the ground, posts, bar and all, and carried them up a mountain on his shoulders. But the strongest man who ever lived was brought down without a single weapon. No army, no sword. Just a woman, a whisper in the dark, and a secret he should have carried to his grave. And here is what almost nobody tells you. The part of the story you think you know. The scissors, the haircut, the beautiful traitor leaning over him in the candlelight. Almost none of it happened the way you've heard it. Tonight we are going back 3,000 years into the vineyards of the Valley of Sorek to find out what really stole the strength of Samson. Because the answer is not what's in your Bible storybook, and his greatest victory came only after he had lost absolutely everything. For 40 years, the people of Israel lived under the boot of the Philistines. 40 years. Think about what that does to a people. A child born the year the oppression began would be middle-aged before it ended. There were grown men in Israel who had never seen a free day in their lives, who had never known anything but Philistine soldiers on the roads, Philistine taxes, Philistine iron. And the book of Judges tells us something chilling about that generation. It doesn't say they cried out to God for rescue. It doesn't say they prayed. By this point, they had simply stopped. Slavery had stopped feeling like slavery. It had started to feel like normal. That's where our story begins, with a beaten people who had forgotten they were ever supposed to be free. In the hill country of Dan, in a town called Zorah, there lived a man named Manoah and a wife whose name we are never told. They had no children. In that world, for a woman, there was no deeper wound. And then, one ordinary day, in an ordinary field, everything changed. A stranger appeared to her. He told her she would have a son, but this would be no ordinary boy. From the moment he was conceived, he was to belong entirely to God. A Nazirite, set apart, consecrated. And this child, the stranger said, would begin to rescue Israel from the hand of the Philistines. Begin. Hold on to that word. We will come back to it. When Manoah asked the visitor his name, the answer should have made the hair on his neck stand up. Why do you ask my name? It is wonderful. That word, wonderful, comes from the Hebrew palah. It is the same root the prophet Isaiah would later use for the coming Messiah. Wonderful Counselor. This was no traveling preacher. When Manoah laid a sacrifice on a rock, the flame leapt up toward heaven, and the messenger stepped into the fire and rose with it, vanishing into the sky. Manoah threw himself face down on the ground, certain he was about to die.
"We have seen God,"
he whispered. And so the boy was born. They named him Shimshon, Samson. The name comes from the Hebrew word shemesh. It means son, their little son. Remember that too, because the man named for the light of the sun is going to end his life in total darkness. Now, the vow. Everything that follows hangs on this, so we have to be clear about it. The Nazirite vow, laid out in Numbers chapter 6, had 3 rules. No wine and nothing from the grapevine at all. No touching a dead body, not even for a parent's funeral. And no razor, ever, upon the head. The hair was the sign. Long, uncut, impossible to hide. Anyone who looked at Samson would know in a single glance, this man belongs to God. That hair was never a magic battery. Write that on your heart, because the whole world has gotten this wrong. The hair was a wedding ring, a flag, a visible promise. And the strength that came with it had nothing to do with the follicles on his head, and everything to do with the God who stood behind the promise. Samson was about to forget that. All of it. Samson grew into a young man, and the Spirit of the Lord began to stir in him. Judges 13:25. But almost immediately, we see the crack that will eventually swallow him whole. He went down to a Philistine town called Timnah. Down. The Bible keeps using that word with Samson, and it is not an accident. And there he saw a Philistine woman, and he wanted her. Not loved her, wanted her. He marched home and told his parents, "Get her for me." Judges 14:2. These were the very people he was born to fight. His mother and father begged him to marry within his own people. He didn't care.
She's the one I want. Get her for me.
This is the flaw, right here. Samson's body was unbreakable, but his appetite ran the whole show. He saw and he took. He would do it his entire life. It would kill him. On the road down to Timnah, it happened. A young lion came roaring out of the vineyard, straight at him. Picture it, the dust, the snarl, the yellow eyes, the muscle of a predator built to bring down prey. Samson had no weapon, nothing in his hands at all. And the Spirit of the Lord rushed on him, and he caught the animal, and he tore it apart, the text says, as easily as a man might tear apart a young goat. Judges 14:6. Barehanded, in seconds. And then he did something strange. He told no one, not his parents, not a soul. He wiped the blood off his hands and kept walking like nothing had happened. Sometime later, on his way back to marry the girl, he turned off the road to look at the carcass. And inside the dried-out body of the lion, a swarm of bees had built a hive. There was honey in it. So Samson reached into the corpse with his bare hands, scooped out the honey, and ate it as he walked. Judges 14:8-9. Stop and feel the weight of that. A Nazirite was forbidden to touch anything dead. It was one of the 3 sacred rules of his entire existence. And Samson plunged his hands into a rotting carcass for a snack. He didn't agonize over it. He didn't even slow down. The holiest man in Israel broke a vow he had carried since the womb for a mouthful of sweetness and felt nothing. At his wedding feast, Samson got cocky. 30 Philistine men were there, officially groomsmen, really a guard detail because everyone was afraid of him. And Samson threw down a bet, a riddle. Solve it in 7 days, and he'd give them 30 fine linen garments. Fail, and they owed him the same. Then he gave them his riddle. Out of the eater came something to eat. Out of the strong, something sweet. Judges 14:14. It was unsolvable. Of course it was. The answer was a secret only he knew. The honey, the lion, the thing nobody had seen. He was toying with them. For 3 days they got nowhere, so they did what cornered, frightened men do. They went to his bride, and they threatened to burn her and her whole family alive. "Get the answer out of him," they said, "or we light the fire." Judges 14:15. So she went to work on him. She wept. She accused.
You don't love me. You hate me. You gave my people a riddle. You gave my people a riddle and you won't even tell me.
Judges 14:16. Day after day of the feast, she cried on him, pressed him, wore him down. And on the 7th day, he caved. He told her, and she told them. Have you ever told someone the one thing you swore you would keep to yourself, just to make them stop crying? Just to buy a little peace? He would learn nothing from it. That's the tragedy. Because years later, in a different valley, with a different woman, he was going to make the exact same mistake. And that time, it would cost him his eyes. 30 dead men in Ashkelon. That's how Samson paid his wedding debt. He stormed down, killed 30 Philistines, stripped them, and used their clothes to settle the bet. Judges 14:19. Then he went home in a rage, and while he was gone, his father-in-law gave the bride away to the best man from his own wedding. When Samson found out, something in him snapped. What he did next was not a brawl. It was economic warfare on a scale no one had ever seen. He went out and trapped 300 foxes, 300, tied them tail to tail in pairs, and fastened a burning torch between every pair. Then he turned them loose into the Philistine grain fields at harvest time. Judges 15:4-5. Imagine it from the Philistine side. You are standing at the edge of your field, the wheat gold and heavy and ready, a full year of food and income standing in front of you. And then the whole horizon catches fire. Fire that moves, fire that screams, fire dragged by panicked animals you cannot catch and cannot stop. The flames jump from the standing grain to the cut sheaves, from the sheaves to the vineyards, from the vineyards to the olive groves. In a single afternoon, the food supply of an entire region is ash. The Philistines demanded to know who did this, and when they heard it was Samson, and why, they marched to Timnah and burned his wife and her father to death. Sit with the horror of that. The woman betrayed Samson in the first place because 30 men threatened to burn her alive. She did the unthinkable to escape the fire, and the fire came for her anyway. The exact death she sold out her husband to avoid is the exact death she died. Samson answered slaughter with slaughter, then went and hid in a cave in the rock. And now the stakes climb again, from one wedding to an entire nation. The Philistines mobilized an army and invaded the territory of Judah. The men of Judah, terrified, did not pick up swords to fight for their God-given deliverer. They sent 3,000 men to arrest him, their own champion. They came to tie him up and hand him over to the enemy, and their only request was, "Promise you won't kill us yourselves." Judges 15:12. 3,000 Israelite men marching out not against their oppressor, but against the one man fighting their oppressor. That is how broken a people can become. They had been slaves so long, they had started doing the slave master's work for him. Samson let them bind him with 2 brand new ropes, and they led him toward the Philistine camp at a place called Lehi. And the enemy army came out roaring in triumph. That's when the Spirit of the Lord rushed on him again. The new ropes on his arms, the text says, turned to burnt flax and simply fell off his hands, melting like thread in a flame. Judges 15:14. Samson looked down at the ground. There was nothing to fight with. Nothing but the fresh jawbone of a dead donkey lying in the dirt. He picked it up, and one man, swinging the bone of an animal, waded into a trained army and struck down 1,000 soldiers. Judges 15:15. 1,000. Every one of them had marched out that morning certain they were about to capture a helpless prisoner. Every one of them was wrong. When it was over, Samson stood alone in a field of the dead and made up a little song about it. Heaps upon heaps with the jawbone of a donkey. Judges 15:16. Then the man who had just killed 1,000 men nearly died of thirst. Drained, shaking, alone, he cried out to God, "You gave this great victory through your servant, and now I'll die of thirst?" Judges 15:18. And God split open the ground, and water came up, and Samson drank and lived. For 20 years, this was Israel's judge. Judges 15:20. 20 years, no army on earth could touch him, but no army was ever the threat. The threat was a question whispered on a pillow, and she was already on her way. There is a strange little story tucked into the middle of all this. and it tells you everything about how untouchable Samson believed he had become. He went to Gaza, a fortified Philistine city, enemy ground, the beating heart of the empire, to visit a prostitute. The men of Gaza found out that the legend himself was inside their walls, so they set a trap. They surrounded the place, posted armed men at the city gate, and waited.
At dawn, when there's light to see by, we kill him.
But Samson got up at midnight. Picture the city in the dead of night. The torches at the gate burning low. The ambush crouched in the shadows, listening, certain their prey is asleep. And the strongest man alive walks straight up to the gates of their city, and instead of slipping past them, he takes hold of them. The two massive wooden doors, the heavy posts sunk deep into the stone, the iron locking bar, and he tears the entire structure out of the earth. Understand what that means. The gate of a fortress city like Gaza was a monster, timber sheathed in metal so it couldn't be burned, weighing somewhere between 400 and 500 pounds, anchored straight into the wall itself. Samson didn't break it down. He pulled it up by the roots, hoisted it onto his shoulders, and walked away with it. And he carried it, the Bible says, toward Hebron. Hebron is roughly 40 miles inland, and it sits nearly 3,000 feet up in the mountains. Whether he hauled that mountain of timber the whole way or to a hill that faced it, the message was the same, and the Philistines could not miss it. Your walls cannot hold me. Your gates are a joke. Nothing you build can keep me out or keep me in. He was right. There was no wall that could stop him, no rope, no army, no city. He had no enemy left anywhere in the physical world. So his last enemy came from inside. In a green valley called Sorek, Samson fell in love. Her name was Delilah. And this time the Bible uses the word love. The man who had only ever wanted women finally lost his heart to one. That was the door the Philistines had been searching 20 years to find. The 5 lords of the Philistines came to her, the rulers of their 5 great cities, with an offer.
Find out what makes him strong. Find the secret so we can finally chain him.
And the price? 1,100 pieces of silver, from each of the 5.
This is the offer.
Do the math, because the number matters. 5 lords, 1,100 shekels each, 5,500 pieces of silver. That is roughly 140 pounds of pure silver. A staggering, life-altering fortune. The kind of wealth that buys estates and servants and an entire future. Samson loved Delilah, but Delilah loved 140 pounds of silver. She was not a heartbroken woman torn between her people and her man. She was being paid a king's ransom to set a trap, and she took the job. So she went to work. "Tell me," she said.
Tell me what makes you so strong. Tell me how a person could tie you down.
And here is the part that should chill you. Samson played along 3 times. He fed her a lie, and 3 times she tried to kill him with it, and 3 times he watched her do it. "Tie me with 7 fresh bowstrings," he told her. So she did, while assassins hid in the next room. "The Philistines are upon you, Samson," she cried. He snapped the strings like burnt thread. "New ropes," he said. "Ropes never used for work." She bound him again. The assassins waited again. "The Philistines are upon you, Samson." He broke the ropes off his arms like cobwebs. "Weave my hair into your loom," he said. And now he is circling the truth. Now he is saying the word hair out loud for the very first time. She wove the 7 locks of his head into the fabric and pinned it tight while he slept. "The Philistines are upon you, Samson," He stood up and ripped the entire loom out of the floor. 3 times the trap snapped shut. 3 times he saw the assassins. 3 times he heard her sound the alarm to men hiding in the dark to murder him. And 3 times he stayed. I can handle it, he must have thought. I can always handle it. I will never be the one who can't get up. Have you ever kept walking back toward the very thing you knew was going to destroy you, telling yourself the whole time that you could stop whenever you wanted? So Delilah quit trying to trick him and started trying to break him.
How can you say you love me when you won't trust me with your heart?
Day after day, the same wound reopened every single morning. The text says she pressed him with her words until, and this is one of the saddest lines in the whole Bible, his soul was vexed to death. Worn down, hollowed out, tired of living. And the strongest man who ever lived surrendered the one secret that held his entire life together. Now, here is where I have to take away the picture in your head. Because what you imagine happening next and what the Bible actually says are 2 different stories. You've seen the painting, you learned it in Sunday school, you saw it in the movies. Delilah, beautiful and cruel, leaning over the sleeping giant in the candlelight, a pair of scissors glinting in her hand, snipping the curls of the man she is about to destroy. It did not happen like that. Not the scissors, not even her hand. Read the verse slowly. Samson fell asleep on her lap, and then she called for a man and had him shave off the 7 locks of Samson's head. She did not cut his hair. She summoned someone else to do it, a hired man, a barber with a razor, called into the room while the giant slept on her knees to scrape his head bare. Delilah didn't even get blood on her hands. She just held the head of the strongest man on earth in her lap and let a stranger finish him. And here is the deeper thing the storybook never told you. The haircut was not the secret. The hair was never the source of his strength, not once. Samson woke up and did what he had always done. He went to shake himself loose, the way he had shaken off the bowstrings and the ropes and the loom. I'll get up like every other time, he thought. And then the Bible delivers the most devastating sentence in the entire tragedy. But he did not know that the Lord had left him. There it is. That's the real secret. The strength was never in the follicles. It was never in the braids. The hair was a sign, a wedding ring on his head, a visible promise that this man belonged to God. And for 20 years, Samson had treated that promise like a costume. He touched the dead. He chased the women. He broke every vow but the last one, and he kept that one only by accident. The hair was the final thread of a covenant he had been shredding his whole life. And the moment it was gone, the relationship it stood for was simply, finally, over. The strength of Samson was never Samson's. It was God's. And God had been waiting patiently for 20 years to be wanted instead of just used. A pair of scissors did not end the strongest man alive. A broken promise did. The men in the next room did not wait this time. They seized him. The giant who had killed 1,000 men with a bone could not fight off a handful of guards in a bedroom. And then they did the cruelest thing they could think of, and there is a terrible poetry in it. The man who had spent his whole life ruled by what his eyes saw, every woman, every want, every get her for me, they took his eyes. They gouged them out. Think about his name. Shimshon, the sun. The little blaze of light his mother and father had prayed for and wept over. And now the sun went out forever, and the world went black, and it would never be anything but black again. They dragged him in bronze chains down to Gaza, the very city whose gates he had once carried off on his shoulders like a trophy. And they put him to work at the mill, turning the great stone that grinds the grain. You need to understand what that meant in that world. Grinding at the mill was the lowest labor there was, the work of female slaves and of oxen. The mightiest warrior alive, the one-man army, the lion killer, was now a blind animal walking in circles in the dark, pushing a stone, while the children of his enemies came to laugh at him. He had everything once: the strength, the legend, the freedom of a man no wall could hold. And he lost all of it. And only there, in the dark, grinding grain like a beast, did he have nothing left to be proud of. But the Bible slips in one quiet line, almost like a secret it doesn't want the Philistines to overhear. The hair of his head began to grow again after it had been shaved. Not because hair is magic, we have settled that, but because the sign of the promise was returning, and a broken man in the dark was beginning, slowly, to remember whose he was. The Philistines threw a festival, the greatest in living memory. They packed their temple, the temple of their god Dagon, wall to wall with their lords, their nobles, their priests. And here is an irony so sharp it should make you sit straight up. For centuries, people imagined Dagon as a fish god. He wasn't. The name comes from the Hebrew word dagan, grain. Dagon was the god of the harvest, the god of the wheat. The Philistines had forced Samson to grind their grain, an act of worship, in effect, to the grain god himself, to celebrate the day their grain god finally crushed the God of Israel. They gathered to gloat that Dagon had won. "Bring out the strong man," they shouted. "Bring out Samson! Let him entertain us!" And they led the blind man in by the hand to stumble for them in his chains. The place was packed beyond capacity. On the roof alone, the flat roof over the central hall, 3,000 men and women crowded the edges to look down and laugh at him. 3,000 people on that roof. And somewhere up there was a family who had climbed the stairs that morning dressed for a celebration. A father pointing out the famous prisoner to his children, a mother lifting a little one up to see over the crowd, all of them giddy to be part of the greatest party their nation had ever thrown. They had no idea they were standing on the lid of a tomb. The blind man asked the boy leading him for one small favor. "Let me feel the pillars," he said. "Let me lean on them and rest." So the boy guided his hands to the two great central columns that held the whole roof up. And Samson, alone in the dark, in the heart of the enemy's temple, stripped of his eyes and his strength and his pride, prayed. For the first time in the whole story, he actually talked to God like he needed him.
O Lord God, remember me. Strengthen me just one more time.
It was not a perfect prayer. He asked for vengeance, for his 2 eyes, he said. Even now, at the very end, he was still partly the same proud, self-centered man he had always been. But it was the truest thing he had ever said. After 20 years of using God like a weapon he kept in his pocket, Samson finally reached for him the way a drowning man reaches for a hand. Have you ever had to lose every single thing you were proud of before you were finally willing to ask for help? He set his right hand on one pillar, his left hand on the other. He braced his feet, and he said the last words of his life.
Let it be done.
Let me die with the Philistines.
Then he pushed. The columns buckled. The roof came down. The lords, the nobles, the priests, the 3,000 on the roof, the whole laughing celebration, all of it collapsed into the dark in a single thunderclap of stone and dust. And the blind slave at the bottom of it, the broken son, died beneath the temple of the grain god he had just buried. And the Bible records the final tally with a kind of solemn awe. The dead he killed in his death were more than all he had killed in the whole rest of his life. Judges 16:30. Remember that word from the very beginning? The angel said this child would begin to deliver Israel. Not finish, begin. Samson never freed his people in his lifetime. He was too busy serving himself. But in his death, in one collapsing moment, he shattered the entire ruling class of the Philistine Empire and cracked their grip on the land wide open. The promise made in a field, before he was even conceived, was kept. Not because Samson was faithful, but because God was. His family came and carried his body home and buried him between Zorah and Eshtal in the tomb of his father. Judges 16:31. 20 years a judge, the strongest man who ever lived, and one of the saddest. Here is what stays with me about Samson. Centuries later, when the New Testament writes its great honor roll of faith, the heroes who trusted God against impossible odds, Samson's name is on the list. Hebrews 11:32. Right there beside the giants. Not because his life was clean, it wasn't. He was reckless and proud and ruled by his appetites, and he wasted a holy calling on selfish little wars. But somewhere underneath all the wreckage, there was a thread of real faith. And in the very last seconds of his life, in total darkness, he finally grabbed hold of it. That is the thing the scissors story always gets wrong. We tell it like the lesson is, watch out for a beautiful woman, or don't get a bad haircut. But the real lesson is so much heavier than that. Samson's strength was never his own. The hair was just the sign of a gift on loan, and the moment he forgot the giver, the gift was gone. He thought the power belonged to him. It never did, and neither does ours. Whatever it is you are strong in right now, your health, your sharp mind, your money, your good years, none of it is the source. All of it is on loan. The one question Samson's whole life is really asking is the one he didn't answer until he was blind. Do you want the God behind the gift? Or are you just using him to get what you want? If this story moved you, if it made you see one of the oldest tales in the Bible in a way you never had before, do me a favor. Like this video so more people find it. Subscribe so you don't miss what's coming next. And share it with someone who needs to hear that even a broken life can end in a moment of grace. And before you go, tell me in the comments, do you think Samson's final prayer was real repentance, or just one last act of revenge? I read every answer. Let's talk about it. The strongest man who ever lived fell because he forgot where his strength came from. May we never make the same mistake.